Hi, welcome to Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf. I'm the founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute. On our show today is Parminder Vir. Parminder joins us today to share her insights from the Women in Leadership Conference and from her life experiences. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such a pleasure, Maureen. Thank you for inviting me.
For you, what's the state of women's leadership in the world today, especially in the rise of the digital age?
I was born in India, in Punjab. I've grown up really all my adult life in the UK, and I've traveled the world making films, and most recently, as you mentioned, living and working in Lagos. The engagement, the involvement, the participation of women in the economies and in social life and cultural life of any country, anywhere in the world is fundamentally important, yeah? And we know that when women are part of the workforce, part of the entire society, economically, those countries thrive and they grow. Yes, as women, there's a constant struggle, no matter what culture you are, no matter what part of the world, the developed economies or the so-called developing economies, the challenges that women face are virtually the same, right? And, they are institutional challenges, they are cultural challenges in terms of being able to take our place both in the home and the custodians of cultures, but also in the workplace.
Irrespective of country or national origin and culture, we're all grappling with fairly similar struggles or challenges or opportunities.
I think we're grappling, but also we are forging and pioneering the why women need to be integrated into society as a whole. Wherever we are in the world, we represent 50% of the population. To leave 50% of the population anywhere in the world behind just doesn't make business sense. It doesn't make social sense. It doesn't make cultural sense.
Countries that integrate women throughout roles in society tend to evolve more quickly and be more productive.
Certainly there are some countries in Europe, particularly Sweden, right? Where they've institutionalized this notion of integration in terms of, their policies and practices. So there are examples of fantastic good practice that we can look to where we know when women are in leadership roles, from CEO to middle management roles, those companies do really phenomenally well, yeah? We know that, when women are sitting at the boards of the companies and also public sector organization, the nature and the quality of the conversation is very, very different. I know that from experience, having sat on many boards where I was often not just the only woman, but always also the woman of color on a board, and observing how you can change the conversation and begin to open the mindsets of the men who think it's their birthright to make the kinds of decisions on behalf of women. Also, as a mother of two young daughters, a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old, I see how they are forging their way in society as very strong, independently self-directed women.
Embedded in this question was the state of women, especially in the rise of the digital age. Is the digital age impacting the role and the opportunities for women?
It is, yeah, and a lot more must be done. We know that globalization and technology are two big drivers in terms of economies around the world, yeah? One of the big things is about skilling women with the digital skills they need in order to be able to compete in the digital world. I mean, it's no coincidence that, there are a large number of e-commerce businesses that are being successfully set up and run by women. Digital, we know it's not universal, right? The availability and the knowledge and technology is not universal. Having traveled across the African continent and in India, a woman with a mobile phone, which is a 4G, a smartphone, there's nothing stopping her in terms of, how she manages her life and how she manages her business, because inevitably, particularly in the informal sectors, across the African continent and in India, women do have to work, and they do work while also running their homes very, very successfully. We talk about institutionalizing luck and democratizing opportunities. They don't seem to go beyond the urban elite. And it's really important that governments, companies, organizations, private and public sectors begin to look at how they can really institutionalize that luck and democratize that opportunity by, simple things like investing in training programs and platforms which really enable women to develop the necessary skills they need in order to leverage the technologies, yeah?
I'm just thinking of a couple of women here in the U.S. Who happen to be personally in my life who both work remotely, and what they needed was a laptop. To your point, one got training on the job for how to do her work. She went in relatively unskilled, but having the technology, she had to provide the laptop. She can work from home. She doesn't need to have a car, which for some people is a significant barrier. One is a mom of a couple of now adult children, but she wanted to be available for her children, so wanted to work from home. Again, with a laptop and a cell phone, as you say, both of these women have opportunities that would not have been available to them had they needed to be in an office during a certain hours of the day. And it is as simple as a laptop.
But it's also as simple as, the employers, if there is this thing, you're either a job creator or a job seeker, and women are creating jobs, right? Where women are seeking employment, yeah? I mean, it's also, a simple thing about having, flexible working hours, or that the flexibility that enables women to be able to work from home, juggle the home, as well as to actually do some work, which earns them income. It is, yes, it is about providing the technology and providing the training. It's the access. I mean, I'll give you an example of, one of the entrepreneurs who applied to the program. There's a woman who's going to do spice. She was her business was spices, yeah? And she was from Côte d'Ivoire. She managed to complete the application, which was an online application. She got selected out of, 150,000 applicants.
Wow.
And when I met her, so she got selected, and I happened to be in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. And she said, ma'am, I got selected, which is fantastic, but, the 12-week program is an online program. But I designed it in a way that you could download each module, and the idea was you apply the tasks in that module to setting up your business. And she said, but I don't have access to a computer, and I don't know I'm going to be able to do this online. So I said, firstly, it's not an online program. But secondly, I said, but you did manage to fill out an application. How did you do that? She said, I got a friend to help me. I said, well, then you need to go back to that friend and say, help me go through the 12-week modules. 6 months later, I met her again, and she gave me her spices. And I said, you have the option of either dropping out of the program or finding a solution. And she found the solution. 6 months later, I saw her again, and she presented me with her spices. I said, my God, how did you do that? She said, I took your advice, and I brought in a partner who knows all about technology. And now I've learned how to sell my spices using technology platform. I mean, and that was a woman who can just about read and write. And there are many, many other stories.
It's amazing to me that you are finding ways to enable, to your point, not the upper top few percent, but the broader range of the population who don't walk in with the same resources.
Exactly. I mean, it is the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, there's, again, we talk about, policies and practices for gender balance, etc. Yeah. But, that was one of the exciting things about being at the ILA conference, was that they were looking for solutions around leadership, but, from the perspective of women across society, yeah, and women, rural women, semi-urban women, illiterate women, women who work in the informal sectors, domestic workers who work in the service industries, yeah. I really feel as women who are seeking to become leaders, I think it's really important we're not seeking to occupy positions in these organizations, right? but that we're seeking to change the mindsets and the cultures of these organizations. So they really do embrace what I call the bottom of the pyramid, which is the mass of the populations.
So, Parminder, what are the challenges and opportunities unique to women in the world of business leadership today?
We can go on all the kind of institutional challenges, yeah, but I'd like to focus on the mindset challenges.
Okay.
I think really, in terms of, nobody, I never learned leadership as a theoretical thing. I never went to school to learn about leadership. I didn't do an MBA or a master's or anything on leadership development. So, I was petrified when I was invited by ILA to come and speak on women in leadership. But it made me reflect, and I really thought, where the hell did these leadership qualities come from? And I think, I use the words like, it was that kind of this deliberate audacity, the enduring optimism, that really, as a child of an immigrant arriving in Britain at the age of 10, not speaking a word of English, having to find my own way in this country, and from a working class background without, not a silver spoon in my mouth, no networks or anything. So I think the challenge for women is to make your own opportunity, to make your own luck, and to create those opportunities. From the place of, the passion and the purpose that you want to pursue. I think the biggest challenge is finding your passion and purpose. Everything has a passion and purpose. The other day, I employed 3 young girls of Polish origins, immigrants in the UK, for deep cleaning of my house. I have never seen more dedicated, more inspired, more hardworking young women. I think there must be about 27, 28-year-olds who work to help me deep clean my house, and with such love and such affection for their work, yeah? So I think, there is dignity in everything that we do. And for me, it's really, and it's what I've taught my daughters, that until and unless you find your passion and purpose, there'll always be the glass ceiling or the concrete ceilings that you're going to be hitting your head against, yeah? And if you have that passion and purpose, then yes, you think, okay, this is what I want to do. But I can see a lot of barriers which are not just affecting my growth, but are affecting other women's growth. What can I do to alleviate that, yeah? I mean, I certainly saw that when I was, as a film and television producer. In 1996, I woke up and said, oh my God, I think I've hit the glass ceiling in this industry 10 years after I joined it. But I was infuriated by the fact that, the British film and television industry was really not harnessing the talent of the Black and Asian community in Britain to work on screen and behind the screen in this sector. And that led me to begin to see, well, how can we bring about a change in that? And so the passion for storytelling led to campaigning for getting greater representation, employment of talent on screen and behind screen in Britain with the formation of the Cultural Diversity Network. So for me, it's really fundamental that women, who are looking to become, in leadership positions, but even if it's, the only leadership, you need to provide is self-leadership and self-direction, yeah? We as women must stop looking to our fathers, our husbands, our brothers to provide us with leadership. We must provide ourselves with our own leadership.
I love the descriptions of enduring optimism and audacity along with passion and purpose. And I would say for me as well, tenacity. And there are a lot of days life just seems hard. And I'm at the top of the pyramid. It seems hard. I can't imagine not knowing how I would feed my children.
Totally. And that's because, leadership is a journey, right? It's not a destination. And, and I know that we think, oh my God, I'm climbing this hill And when I get to the top, that will be it. And then you look up and you see there's another hill and there's another hill. And and yes, the first is feeding our children. And now that our children are grown up, there's always constant renewal and constantly facing new challenges. I think the women who live in comfort zone, I think the other is tenacity, but also constantly living and working out of your comfort zones.
Which seems, at least for me, to be most of my life. As you talk about climbing the hill, I did not grow up as an athletic young woman. And at some point in time, one of my closest friends was doing adventure travel. So hiking the Incan Trail and climbing Kilimanjaro and those things. And again, not very athletic as a young woman, and probably still not. So, we're climbing, and I was doing exactly that. Like, we've got 3,000 feet to go. And I get to the top of something and, oh my goodness, it's that much longer. Same with kayaking. It looks like we're going a short distance, and 4 hours later, it still looks like we have as far to go. And it is interesting how we set our goals and define success so that we are able to have enough energy to stay the course when it seems...
But the meditation on that journey, which is the most important thing, isn't it? Your own transformation as you're making that journey, whether you're climbing or whether you're kayaking, and meditating very deeply on who are you, what are you, what is your destiny and destination?
For me, it was the hiking was a big personal change. Again, overcoming. So being a kid that wouldn't even run the 300-yard dash in high school, and then doing multi-day, in some cases quite rigorous travel, and developing my own internal strength to put one foot in front of the other, just because failure would have been so humiliating. But knowing that I needed to build that ability to continue forward on days where I just wanted to quit. And that inner skill really has served me well in my current roles.
But also what comes through from just listening to you, we're not fearful of hard work. We know what is hard work, yeah? We're not undisciplined. We are extremely disciplined. If we can run our homes and run our companies and then go and run organizations, that's an extraordinary, which is what we as women do, right? I think it's really important that we as women embrace failure. For me, failure is a fundamental right of every human being, because it's only through failure that we learn, yeah? And a lot of women from a very young age are taught not to fail. To fail is a bad thing, but it's really important to fail, because without failing, we do not grow, right? And I think also that we hold the big picture, and we're not siloed in our thinking, in our imagination, and to allow our imagination to run wild.
Can you give an example of where you failed? And then the second half of that, what do you imagine is possible now in your world?
Wow, where have I failed? Where do I start? I think, when you're making films, failure is a daily occurrence because, and you know this, you're pitching ideas, you really want to make this film for television or for the big screen, and you're getting no, and you think, oh my God, is there something wrong with my ideas? So for me, it was always like, okay, I've got 10 no's, 20 no's, 30 no's, but there'll be that one film, that one idea, which will be the transformative moment. So I guess I learned very early on, but when I, began working in the film and television industry, thankfully for me, it wasn't until I was in my 30s, I turned 30, then I moved into the industry. So I'd already had a career before that. It's a failure, but it is a failure because if, those were accumulative news, I could have given up within the first 6 months of joining this industry and said, no one's ever going to back my idea. Crazy film, I want to go off and make a film about Algerian women who fought in the Algerian Revolution. who is going to actually finance that? Yeah, who's going to support me to go and find those women who fought in the revolution 30 years ago, and then to talk to them and see what happened to them. But I know that, that was one of probably, 100 ideas of films that I wanted to make before I got that one off the ground. So failure in that sense, yes, and in setting up a number of businesses with founding partners, and knowing that it's, they had run their course. So I learned, and it's a word that's obviously very much in our vocabulary as entrepreneurs, is pivoting. So I meant that there weren't failures, that I was constantly having to pivot and say, and so that was on projects, but also in terms of one's own, professional career, yeah? So I worked in the arts and I went so far. And then I pivoted into film and television production, and then I pivoted into film and media financing, always learning new skills and adding to my kind of knowledge bank in order to be able to then take that knowledge into my next work. So I think, learning to pivot, I think that's what I've done. But I think the other is, particularly with, I found myself in my late 50s, I turned 60 in Lagos, Nigeria, in fact, was really seizing the opportunities, yeah? So I believed that, in my own professional career, I've created the opportunities, yeah? I've seen a gap, and I've gone in there and created an opportunity where I know I can add value. I think probably because I wasn't looking for a job, yeah? But adding to whatever I was doing, whether being an entrepreneur within an organization because I wanted the organization to change, or being an entrepreneur, setting up my own various companies that I did. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, that is fundamental to be able to create your opportunities and to seize the opportunities, and not to be afraid to learn new skills.
You've talked a lot about pivoting and what got you here. You're now 60, and in some cases, you are probably the crone or the wise woman. What is your next pivot, and what makes that exciting to you?
The next pivot is reflection, is consolidation. Having worked in the arts, then in the film and television industries. And then in the last 5 years of falling in love absolutely with the African continent, seeing why Africa matters, not just for Africans, but for us across the world. Africa is the future. And if Africa succeeds, we all succeed. And if Africa fails, we all fail in globally, yeah? So I think I guess my next pivot, or the next, iteration is really to tell the Africans, to work with African entrepreneurs, to work with African storytellers, to really change the perception of Africa in the outside world.
It's a beautiful aspiration, and I love the idea. Again, my commitment is elevating the quality of leadership across the globe by omitting an entire continent. Because we do now function as a global economy, it's like excluding half of the population and excluding women. We have to be more inclusive. Parminder, let's do a couple of statistics, and then I'm still fascinated by your story and how this pivot will make a difference in the world.
Well, let's look at statistics. I was avoiding sharing statistics, and obviously, the World Bank, all the five big sort of, organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers and Accenture, etc. There's endless reports that tell you, it's not rocket science, guys. Including women in everything makes sense, right? Here's one from the Harvard Business School, which shows that according to an analysis of like thousands of 360-degree reviews, women outscored men 17 of the 19 capabilities that differentiate excellent leaders from the average or the poor ones. Another one from PricewaterhouseCoopers World Work Index in 2018. They've done a lot of research on gender balance, pay equity, discrimination, and hostile workplaces. They concluded that achieving economic gender parity in line with, say, for example, one of those, amazing examples is obviously Sweden, which has one of the highest female employment rates, could add US $1.82 trillion to the GDP of the United States of your country, right? 500 million of that to that of Japan, and another $310 billion to that of Germany. And in my own country, the United Kingdom, engaging women as part of the workforce, they will add $250 billion to the UK's GDP. When professional women thrive, it's absolutely fundamentally clear. So do businesses, organizations, and global economies.
Let's talk about some of the tools, skills, and information that women leaders need to be armed with in the current business culture.
I think certainly, like going back most recently around the work I did with the Jamila Mulu Foundation, it was, obviously empowering 10,000 entrepreneurs. That was the commitment over the next 10 years from 2015. In fact, we've already empowered 7,000 plus entrepreneurs. Because we also managed to get additional partners to support additional entrepreneurs. We selected 1,000. One of the things, right, in the start of the program, 24% of the applications that we received were from women business owners across 54 African countries. Yeah? And I made it my mission that within 5 years, I would aim for a 50-50. And by 2019, that number had increased to 41%. Yeah. So, how was that achieved? It wasn't that one created a separate door marked women, entrepreneurship program, but actually using, the success stories of the women who had applied and had been selected, using them as the role models to say, what, entrepreneurs, women, look, here are the women entrepreneurs, and you too could be an entrepreneur because they're not that dissimilar to what you look like. Yeah, young professionals. They're not, not always, coming from that kind of, very diverse base of the African economies. So I guess what I'm saying is, that's an example of how you can empower women with the basic tools of training, skilling them is capacity building, with a structured approach to how you go from an idea for a business to actually launching it through mentoring. And I think it's really important that women, wherever they are, in whatever, levels of society they are, we do not get where we've got to without our mentors, yeah? And really to encourage more and more women to become mentors, and not just constantly be looking to men to mentor women. And women must also begin to mentor other women. So, training, mentoring, and then providing those women with a tiny seed capital of $5,000. What blew my mind was that it's amazing what, young African or African women entrepreneurs can do with the training, with the mentoring, and the $5,000. And, with the right mindset in terms of going from an idea to a business which is generating revenue, so it's putting food on the table and impacting their community, their family and their communities, but also creating jobs and employing other women. So I think that, that's an example of how you can really make a fundamental shift in such a short time. And it's that, and that's the success story that the foundation is now riding on, that we didn't create a separate program for women, but we integrated the needs of women entrepreneurs into the program for entrepreneurship development.
I love the idea of the integration. I run a program in my local community, and we've talked about, it's a technology leadership development program. And we've talked about, should we do women's programs and men's programs? And I am strongly of the view, and I know there are variations and circumstances that are different, but that if I create my own door for only women to go through, then they're excluded from the power structure by the very choice of going through a women-only program. And so I have a strong bias, not that it's appropriate for every situation, certainly, but that we do integrate women and men, because especially as entrepreneurs, many of the challenges we're facing are similar. And I also like that you attract people to the program by building on the success of others. It's not by looking at the shortage of we only have 41%, but wow, we have 41%. And how do we tell their stories, which is something you're brilliant at, to attract more people rather than focusing on the deficiencies?
And using women, whenever we reach for examples of successful entrepreneurs, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all these male, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., these names roll off our tongue, yeah? We need to get to a position where, women business leaders' names begin to roll off our tongues, right? Whether they are dynamic entrepreneurs, high growth entrepreneurs, or really, the big now multinational corporate entrepreneurs. They all started with an idea. They all started with a passion, yeah? And we as women must, in our own narrative, in our own storytelling, begin to highlight, celebrate, women who are building extraordinary solutions. Because after all, that's what you are as an entrepreneur. You've seen a gap, or you've seen a problem, and you are filling that. You're building a solution around that problem. Yeah.
One of the other things you mentioned is mentoring. I interviewed actually a woman. She's a CIO for a multi-billion-dollar company. And she talked about her mentors being people she knows in person that she's worked with, male and female, but also that she looks to people as mentors that she's never met. So someone could follow you on a podcast and they could consider you a mentor, even though you don't hang out and have coffee in person.
I think that's fundamental. And that is, again, technology, what is it? It's an enabler, yeah? And I just think that if we can begin to use it as an enabling tool, the greater its impact, yeah? Certainly now, there's not, when I built the data bank or the mentoring program as part of the mentor learning program at the foundation, I didn't limit the mentors to just the African continent. We have amazing mentors from the US, UK, Australia, China, mentoring African entrepreneurs on the continent, yeah? And many of those mentors have begun, I've developed very deep relationships with entrepreneurs and enterprises that they haven't met, yeah, face to face. So no, for me, mentoring is a fundamental pillar of professional development and personal growth as well. And the more we can institutionalize mentoring wherever we are, in whatever capacity, whether we're running our own businesses or whether we're working in a corporate environment, the more that we will grow the talents. There's no shortage of talent, actually. There's the policies and the practices of organizations that blind them to talent that is there and to harnessing that talent. For me, in across the African continent, Africa's biggest resource, its most precious resource, is its human capital. And the challenge for the African leaders, whether they're political or whether they're business leaders, is to harness that human capital.
Do you have one recommendation as we're coming to the close of the show for so I'm in Ohio, how would I contribute to the solution?
you start local, yeah? I mean, you start locally because Ohio, it's really interesting that I've been reading a lot about the sad loss of Toni Morrison. She's from Ohio, yeah? She started small. She started writing from the place where she came from. She understood her local environment. She understood the local challenges, yeah? And so I think if you are in Ohio and you're a woman and you're either looking to set up your own business or you're looking to go and add value and really make an impact in an existing organization, I think goes back to find your passion and purpose. Develop a roadmap of how you're going to get from A to B to C. It's not like you're going to arrive overnight. It's a long-term journey. Leadership is a long-term journey. It's not and the important thing is that you live that, you make that journey with integrity. And integrity is that that you're constantly reminding yourself of why you are doing this, yeah? Yes, it could be just because I need to earn some money. But, just earning money in itself is not enough of a motivator. I feel that too much in Western society, so I guess in all societies, you and I have been very lucky in that, our professional life and our personal life are very integrated. Because we know that we're passionate about, we shouldn't be working in the media and creative industries or changing lives of hundreds of thousands of people as I've done working on the African continent. But for a lot of people, it's, go to a factory, they're doing their job, and then they're coming home. I guess given the world is changing and it is really technology driven, and it's the knowledge economy, and we as women need to begin to build our knowledge banks.
I love the idea that we build our knowledge. We build it through, you've talked about training and mentoring and structured approaches and changing our mindsets and developing a roadmap. To the aspiring women leaders, always stay focused on the why, which you just mentioned, and not on the what of the chosen field. When you lose sight of the why and your passion for what you're doing will be diminished, and it's impossible to inspire and lead from a point of diminished. And what I've heard from you through this entire conversation is your passion and your commitment to what you do and what you're going to do going forward and on the continent of Africa. So for our listeners, always remembering the why, because it's in the light of that your energy will guide the activities and make possible what seems impossible. That life is a journey, leadership is a journey, and it is important to make sure that we live that journey with integrity. So Parminder, how would people find you? Just give us the 10-second email address or the foundation website.
You can find me on my website, www.parmindervir.com. And I'm using my website, I guess, as a platform for telling stories around entrepreneurship, sharing my passion around films, talking about sharing the amazing books that I've read, which have influenced me and guided me. My passion for art and culture, which you can follow and read on the website, or the web blog, as I call it.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Please do reach out to Parminder and follow her weblog. We hope that you will join us again soon to learn more about innovating how you lead.